This is Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
Hey everyone, how's it going? We are here, Winnipeg Sports Talk, on a Wednesday, November 25th. What's going on? Michael Remis here in for Hustler, hosting the show. If you haven't been on Twitter, Hustler is at the World Cup in Qatar right now. He is at this Canada-Belgium game. I don't know if it was a smart idea to do the show at the same time as this soccer game that, I think at least 3 million people in the country are going to be watching. But hey, I'm not changing up the routine, and I'll try not to do any spoilers or anything. Who knows? But we do have a great show coming up today. The Jets in Minnesota. A big divisional matchup tonight. The Jets coming off their win on Monday in overtime against Carolina. We're going to be talking about the Bombers. Locker cleanout yesterday. That loss still stinging. I don't know if it's going to take a while. I don't know if I'm over it. It's going to take a while to get over. We'll be talking about it. And the player reaction with Darrin Bauming. Scott Billeck with all the lineups and stuff from the morning skate there. He is in Minneapolis. And we'll be hearing about the Wild from Jessi Pierce with the Bardown Beauties podcast. The Wild, not as great of a start as we thought. 8-2, -5 goal differential. I think Marc-Andre Fleury's banged up. So we'll get a beat on her. What's going on with Minnesota this year? And lastly, David Pagnotta, the fourth period. Just the NHL. We're at Thanksgiving. The playoffs are set, right? If you're in the playoffs at Thanksgiving, you should be in the playoffs at the end of the year. That's the old wives' tale, as they call it. So lots to get to today. And hey, got to give out a shout out to all our sponsors, make this show possible. Consolidated Supply, Vitahealth, Wallace and Wallace, Not AutoCorp, Royal Sports, F Apparel. We got Princess Auto, Culligan, Canadian Club, Boston Pizza, Nick and Nicky DQ, Little Brown Jug, and Coolbet. So I want to thank everyone for coming in on the show. I see a lot of people multi-screening. Maybe you got one on a tablet, one on the TV. I do have the Canada game on. So we are all excited for them being back in the World Cup. And I got to say before that, I've seen a lot of takes on the World Cup and soccer from a lot of North Americans who may not be in the soccer 24/7. We've become a soccer nation more here in Canada. But the one that I am enjoying is I'm seeing a lot of people kind of confused about injury time. And if you watch soccer, you know that at the end of a half, they have something called injury time or extra time. It's an undetermined amount of time that at the referee's discretion, they can add based on stoppages. And it's 2022. Like, we can't get a clock. We can't figure out how to stop the time. Why aren't we having a more precise measurement here of how much extra time there is? I enjoy that. I found it kind of funny. Anyways, we'll bring in Murat here. We'll talk about the Jets. 11-5-1. We're at the Thanksgiving break. It's been not Thanksgiving. Well, I don't know when to call it a break. They're playing on Black Friday, but we're at U.S. Thanksgiving, which is pretty much the quarter point of the season. They've played 18 games out of 82. Things are looking pretty good, and I thought it'd be great to have Murat on and just be like, hey, what's going on with this team here? And just we'll take a bit of a micro look at what we saw on Monday, but more of an overall on how the season has lived up to our expectations. And here, let's welcome in Murat Atesh from The Athletic. The Jets and Thanksgiving, 11-5-1, comfortably in a playoff spot, which means, of course, they're going to be in the playoffs at the end of the season, right? Anyways, Murat, looking at the Jets here, can you compare this team as it stands now to what we saw last year when we've been saying all summer that kind of very similar roster?
Yeah, it's One of the best storylines of Winnipeg hockey in a city with lots of great storylines sports-wise, and it's a great storyline in the division in the Western Conference, is that, well, Winnipeg was up against it heading into the offseason. We've talked about all of that stuff, a couple of times, and then they hire Rick Bowness and change the captaincy, and how well are they actually going to play out on the ice, especially when Nikolai Ehlers gets hurt 2 days in? I saw Sean Reynolds report that, the surgeries happened today, 6 weeks out, which seems soon. Anyway, so without Nikolai Ehlers, with injuries to so many other players, and yet the process has been so much better. And Remis, I think, I'm a big, is this sustainable guy? Like that's, a question I ask a lot. Sure, they're winning. How are they winning? Is it okay that they're winning that way? And, in the last couple of years, it's been hard to make that argument with a fan base that has seen some early season wins and didn't necessarily always, I don't want to say not want to hear it, but, you want to believe that things are good. And I remember this time a year ago now, where the Jets had gotten out to some early wins, but I was on those early road trips and I was writing, well, they should be playing better. There's process missing here. They're kind of getting by the skin of their teeth a little bit. At this stage, to look at their record, their winning record, I think they're full value for it. And I think that whether it's Hellebuck or whether it's coaching, whether it's all of those different little things that get into it, it's flat out a better team. And yeah, I agree with you. Probably they're going to make the playoffs.
I'm starting to believe it myself. And, you mentioned, are they winning and is it sustainable? I think if they had, kept playing like they played on that road trip in LA and Vegas, where Hellebuck had to stand on his head for them to earn points. But you've just seen, I don't know if it's resiliency or that they don't give up, that games where they're not at their best, they're winning. And they're, when they're down and not playing the best, they're finding ways to win. You look at the game against Seattle where they came back, Arizona. And now some of those are in overtime, but last year they weren't winning overtime games. And this year their overtime record has been pretty good. And that's almost the difference between playoffs and not last year. And it just seems like, as you said, a lot of different things are coming together, leading to them being in the playoffs. And one of them has definitely been the goaltending in Connor Hellebuck, who's been absolutely phenomenal. I don't know where I'm going with this, but we can go to the. I
will say to Huss. No, yeah. Oh, Huss. See, look at that instinct. Andrew Hustler Paterson out in Doha, still thinking of you.
Yeah.
No, Remo. I was thinking, like, if you're looking for signs of unsustainability, and this could bite me because I'm saying the process has been good. The process has been good. That road trip you mentioned, good to point out. I mean, the process was not good. But if you look at teams that collect a lot of overtime points, usually there's some paper tigers there. That's something that you can usually expect to regress to about 50-50 because, unless you're Connor McDavid, there's not really that huge of a difference between some of the top end talent on teams. Also, goaltending is another one that can come back to earth. And I think that you and me, we'd probably look at Hellebuck's career and think, well, this is him coming back away from earth and into the stratosphere, I guess, to keep the words going, as opposed to crashing down to earth. I don't think that we're looking at Hellebuck and thinking, well, his numbers are going to crash this season. I think we're looking at it and saying, well, he's put a lot of seasons together just like this one. And, well, look at what he can do when the defense is a little bit better in front of him. So it's not perfect. But, yeah, I think that there's enough to like when they beat the teams that they're supposed to beat, when there are moments of games where, you kind of look to last year's versions of the club and you would think there's probably going to be some point at which they give this one away. That's not happening. You can watch a lot of those games and believe Winnipeg's getting enough chances, moving the puck well enough, avoiding the major mistakes well enough. You can start to see that, yeah, they're at least average because they're beating a lot of the teams they should beat. And there's some times when they beat the good ones too.
I'll say this about Hellebuck last year. I've been thinking about him a lot lately as it's come up on the show. I have a newborn at home, and I am running this show right now on very little sleep. So I couldn't imagine. I don't know what the delegation of parenting duties are, but I think we can explain him going from the best goalie to only a top 10 goalie in the NHL last year. We had the newborn narrative all season, and you mentioned the Jets winning the games they're supposed to win in the past. They didn't do that. They won against Montreal in overtime, didn't have their best. They had blew out Chicago at home, but they're also beating good teams, winning against Dallas at home, winning against Carolina on Monday. And this brings us to Monday's game. I mean, that process looked great for 55 of those 60 minutes. What happened there in those last 5? Have you ever seen 3 goals with the goalie pulled?
You know what? I couldn't remember it, but then I went digging, and I guess it happened. St. Louis scored 3 times in a losing effort against Arizona.
Wow.
They also gave one up into their own empty net against Arizona in 2021, I think February 21. But I was talking to Brad, who runs a Natural Stat Trick, and he found one that I had seen and forgotten about, where the Anaheim Ducks did it to the Edmonton Oilers in the playoffs in 2017, I think it was. So I guess in 2017 it was. And that was in and around the time in my life I was having concussions and stuff like that. But I remember coming back from a waiting room to watch that happen. And I mean, maybe that's why I forgot. Oh my goodness, traumatic brain injuries. Probably shouldn't joke about them. The thing is, though, I guess it's happened a couple of times, is what I'm saying. And then to watch it live, to watch it in that building where, like you said, the process was pretty good for Winnipeg against Carolina. They're supposed to be such a heavy forechecking team. Well, every time Winnipeg went back into its own zone, it moved the puck quickly. The Jets got to get into some video here, I think, because I think the Jets identified something in the way Carolina was dumping the puck in and was coming back with 2 options very low in the zone, and they were breaking out really well against a team that's impossible to break out really well against. So I thought, okay, great coaching, great execution. Maybe Carolina's just tired. I don't know. But then for 5 minutes, everything that could go wrong did. I mean, Carolina was getting deflection goals. Winnipeg was having the opportunity to score into an empty net. They missed. The Jets could have continued to run a deep group of forwards, but they sat 3 of their 4 penalty killers, at least at forward, to run a top 6 back-to-back, first line, second line, first line, second line, or a newfangled version of those with a lot of the veterans at the end. So probably they were tired. Even then, Josh Morrissey goes to block a shot. It goes through him. Riddick is screened. And so the Carolina Hurricanes just kept coming, and every single bounce that they needed, whether it was Winnipeg self-inflicted or Andrei Svechnikov making great plays or the puck hitting just what it needed to bounce. I mean, when you have one of those, I don't want to say once in a lifetime, but once in a several year stretch of play type of experiences, it takes a lot of those things just bouncing wrong. And man, if David Riddick had not come away with that win, can you imagine the confidence shift in his career? Or sorry, maybe his career. I meant to say his season, but maybe it's that big for a goaltender known for his emotional.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you can fault him. It seemed like it was open season on the tip drill in front. Guys were just having no problem getting their stick out on those Burns point shots. I saw, first of all, you mentioned that you're on a first name basis with Brad from Natural Stat Trick, which
no big deal.
Yeah,
no big deal, Remo.
Little name dropping.
Deal.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. But we tweeted out about the Jets shortening their bench in the third period for a team that's preached unity and everyone's a family, and they've had fourth line players in key situations making key contributions in the past. I remember Sam Gagner scoring a big goal, or who was it, Gustafsson. I mean, why do you think they decided to shorten the bench there in that third period, the last 5 minutes?
I mean, that's a great question. It's kind of a failure of us collectively, is that we didn't ask that question in the post game. But in terms of sort of interpreting it, I think first off, you never expect that there's going to be three goals scored against.
Yeah.
So early on in the 3-0 sort of sphere, probably you don't mind just going to your big guns, and maybe one of them gets a goal for free, game's on ice, you don't have to worry about it too much. Maybe that has a little bit to do with it. At the same time, Rick Bowness rearranged those forward lines to elevate Adam Lowry and to take Cole Perfetti out of that group in that top 6. So it was almost a veteran exclusive group of players. And so maybe that's a sign that the coaches wanted to thought that the veterans were having a good game, or, thought that the veterans were the ones that should be trusted. And I think it's right to mention Gustafsson or Axel Jonsson-Fjallby or Saku Maenalainen, who were parts of Winnipeg's extremely successful penalty kill, and they're really sound defensive players. So maybe it's that they don't have the coach's trust in those high leverage moments with the game on the line. Maybe it's the coach never quite thought the game was on the line until it was 3-2, and then all of a sudden you go right back to the veterans. I'm not too sure. But I don't think that Bowness really thought fatigue was an issue, because he didn't choose to use a timeout either, even as he went from line 1 to line 2 and line 1 to line 2. On defense, I get it. Maybe I could understand not putting Ville Heinola out there in his first game in a while in a situation like that. So just use the top 4. That makes sense. But up front, there were a lot of good penalty killers, good defensive players that just got missed.
Yeah, I actually like that explanation there. They didn't think they were going to score 3 empty net goals. They figured out, put these guys out, try to get one, and it kind of gets away from you. I think that's reasonable. You mentioned Ville Heinola. He made his season debut on Monday. What are your early impressions? And he's getting back in the lineup tonight. Is Dylan DeMello. He's still out, but they're hoping he's back Friday.
Yeah, I think Ville Heinola looks closer to Ville Heinola as we know and expect him to be. I was pretty critical of his camp, especially early, to be honest. And, in a situation where there's probably a job to be won, between Dylan Sandberg, maybe Logan Stanley was in that mix. I know he's hurt now, but, in terms of winning jobs, Ville Heinola had an opportunity to come in and show, well, hey, I'm an NHL player through and through. And I think he was tentative. I don't think he was confident. And when he made some of those early mistakes, I'm sure the stakes were so high for him that played into it as well. Well, since going back to the Manitoba Moose, he's found his game again, and he's back to the player where on that team, everything runs through him at every strength of play. He's a good defensive player. He moves the puck so well. The breakouts run through him in the offensive zone. The play often runs through him as well. The power play often runs through him. And I think he's got a little bit of that swagger back in terms of knowing what he can do and knowing that each puck touch is going to be good. There was one mistake that I can think of where he just completely mishandled a puck in the neutral zone. The puck came to him and it just bounced off of his stick to a Hurricanes player. And that was a bit of a what just happened. But he tracked back so quickly, so aggressively, and he threw his body in the way of that player catching up to him and stopping him at the far post. And that's the kind of effort that you'd like in that situation. The rest of his game I thought was really clean, and it's nice to see that he'll get another look tonight.
Yeah, that defense, you've been talking about it all summer until now, and a number of teams with injuries on the back end. You have to wonder what happens here with the Jets, because they're going to be without Nikolai Ehlers. We found out today, as you said, surgery, out for 6 weeks. How do they manage? I mean, they've managed without him pretty well, going since the beginning of his injury. But now you have Appleton out. Barron continues to be out. How do they manage without being Ehlers for another 6 weeks?
I mean, I think that there's no way around the fact that there's going to be some treading water to it. And I know their record is good. So, okay, there might be some being like, who needs this guy? What did he ever bring? Winnipeg's winning without him. And, that's not necessarily how it works. The Jets have played well and earned it. But over the long haul, you want a tremendous amount of quality available to you, and that's that player. So what do? They're in a tough spot without Appleton too, because they've been made to promote Sam Gagner to the top line. Kyle Connor and Mark Scheifele are starting to go, and Gagner has chemistry with them offensively. He can certainly think the game offensively and execute plays. That tremendous backhand pass for Kyle Connor over the weekend. There are some plays that he can make that really show that top end talent and skill. At the same time, he doesn't really have the foot speed. He doesn't have the size. So you worry about him in that, game on the line sort of situation defensively, I would say, as smart as he is. And so that you lose a little bit of there. From time to time, you see Adam Lowry get promoted to that line, and it's just to add a little bit of defense or to make sure they win a face-off. So that's one of the contingency plans. But I think that it's going to be really, really tough unless secondary scoring continues. And Mikey Eyssimont got his first NHL goal against Carolina. Turned out to be huge. They needed every goal they got that day. And that was on a nice hustle follow-up of a David Gustafsson breakaway. That breakaway was made possible by David Gustafsson's excellent defensive work, knocking a puck loose and then collecting it again from Jansen Harkins, who set him up. Winnipeg needs that secondary scoring in a big way, because all teams really have to do otherwise is saw off those top two lines, and then just make hay against the bottom half. And I think it's going to take it's going to be hard, but I think it's going to take a concerted effort from a lot of guys who aren't necessarily known for producing big points.
And we do need to give a shout out to the bottom six forwards. They weren't getting a lot of production from them last year. You bring in Saku, Menelainen, Axel, Jonsson Fjallby, waiver claim, and Sam Gagne, he's been up and down. But I think one of the key differences from this year to last year early on is they're getting contributions from that bottom line that was under the radar, remodeled in the offseason.
Yeah, it's a win for the pro scouts, I think, and it's I don't know if that's a change in philosophy at their end, if they just happen to hit on these few guys specifically, but I think that they brought in people that we didn't know a lot about, like Menelainen or Jonsson Fjallby, or even Kevin Stenlund, who's been good for the Moose, but showed well with Menelainen at Jets camp. They did well to bring in guys who could help in those roles. And, it's cost a guy like Jansen Harkins some minutes. Signing Kyle Capobianco cost the Jets Jonathan Kovacevic altogether. I think they were surprised he was claimed. So being able to fill in at that back end, whether it's the depth forwards or depth defense, I think helps in a big way. And to talk to Rick Bowness, he talks about load management in a full season context. And so I think it's supposed to help to be able to trust these guys so that Winnipeg's top six, especially when Ehlers returns, can really have an impactful second half of the season and even into the playoffs. Yeah, I think that's the goal. It seems to be working.
It's kind of funny. I mentioned, the impact they've had, but then I look at the stats. Jonsson Fjallby's got 1 goal in 15. Menelainen's got 2 points in 17. And Gustafsson 3 points in 17. So not a lot, but it feels like they've contributed in a defensive role, penalty killing. And you have noticed, he's got 1 goal, Axel, but I thought leading up to that goal, which was a big one, he was having some pretty good chances and he was rewarded. But I think a lot of people have noticed a difference of those guys. One person we've noticed a difference in, Josh Morrissey. I think, other than Connor Hellebuyck, with the way he's played, he's got to be the story of the season. I don't know if anyone saw him leading the team with 18 points in 17 games, point per game player. He's top 10 among defensemen in scoring. He had the down year 2 years ago. He had a bit of a resurgence last year, but what are you seeing from Josh Morrissey that's fueling this breakout here at this point of the season?
I mean, it's got to be part continuation of last year's resurgence, because I know after finally having, I guess, the time to even train properly, but also a little bit more peace with the passing of his father, I think that, heading into last season, Morrissey took it on himself to really make that step forward that he'd been missing in a little while. Heading into last season, he also changed his training, and we talked to he and I talked a little bit about that for a story I wrote last season, where, gone were pure strength, initiatives, and he was really, really working on explosiveness and speed. And I think that was a step forward. To watch him skate right now, I mean, I think he's as fast and as effortless looking on the ice as he's ever been. I mean, there have been plays where you're watching him, he's boxing out a guy while skating and generating strides and speed as somebody's leaning on him in the offensive zone. He's fighting the guy off and still accelerating. And I'm like, how do you do that? That's a situation where, he's added a dynamism to his skating, even above beyond, I think, what we've seen before. So I think for me, to watch him, his skating is where this incredible surge comes from, and it has to be rooted in. And at the same time, you talk to him and he credits coaching, and Winnipeg has given its defensemen the green light, as Rick Bowness likes to say. They're getting more, instead of just talking about it, they're seeing forwards come back to help so defensemen can jump up into the play. Forwards are finding ways to use them. Morrissey's speed is tailor-made for that situation. And it's not just skating speed, but it's decision speed. He has an assertiveness with the puck. He's making plays. He's setting his teammates up. So many assists. But Remo, the one thing that stunned me, because we've talked to Rick Bowness, and every few days a different reporter says, hey, what's making Josh Morrissey so great? And we've talked about the systems, and we've talked about, Morrissey's character, and we've talked about his speed and all of that sort of stuff. But Bowness said, for the first time after the Carolina game, he shared that, well, when they spoke this summer, he told Morrissey specifically, when Norris Trophy voting comes in, I think you're a guy that can be in the top 10, and I want to see that from you. And Remo, I didn't know it was as easy as telling Morrissey to be great, and then he could be great just like that. But it seems to be working for the Winnipeg Jets. There's harmony in his style, the way he plays, and the way that he's being coached right now.
It's crazy to think that he could have been, maybe he could have been this player, and all we need was Rick Bowness to tell him that he could be great, and then he could be great. That's all that we need. And it's amazing seeing, how much you hear the players talk about the impact that he's had on this team. The Jets are in Minnesota tonight, and you actually traveled to Minnesota and spoke with the families of Dylan Samberg and Neil Pionk in Hermantown. What did you learn about them that we can see in this great article in The Athletic?
Oh man, yeah. Thanks for mentioning that. It was such a good trip. I drove out to Hermantown, which when it was a little bit warmer, I should say, and got treated to a full day of Hermantown community. I had coffee and a good hour chat with Neil Pionk's parents, Scott and Karen, outside their home. And they live on this beautiful acreage that they bought in 2000. I think it was 2000. And, Scott Pionk is in landscaping. They made a perfect ball diamond there. There's an outdoor rink that they have set up there. It was just a playground paradise for the kids growing up. And they hosted all kinds of neighborhood tournaments. And they had this holiday cup that they would play with the neighboring kids, from, the farm over kind of deal, or from town itself. We went to Hermantown Arena, where the banners just line the place. State championships, boys and girls, runners-up banners, second in the state. When they moved to Hermantown in the year 2000, I think there were 2 banners at Hermantown Arena. Now you can't look up. It's just wall to wall to wall. They've done so much winning. Dylan Samberg is a part of that. He's got two state championships to his name as well. And so we got to meet his folks. His dad is just a mountain of a man, like even bigger than Dylan is, I think. And the connections between those two families go way back. The one thing I'll share specifically, just to think of just the connections that go between the Winnipeg Jets, you could never even imagine. Neil Pionk, when he found out that he was traded to the Winnipeg Jets from the New York Rangers, he was golfing with Dominic Toninato, who his dad was friends with from back in the day. And there's a photo of Neil Pionk as a 5-year-old scoring a goal in one of the outdoor rinks. And in the background, you got Jim Toninato on one side and Scott Pionk on the other side cheering this goal. That's a pretty cool connection. Mike Samberg, Dylan's dad, used to play softball against Scott Pionk and just, I guess, hit moonshots all day. Just a great athlete and a big, powerful guy. But then it was about the moms, and the story I wanted to share, that the story was and is, and you really got to read it. It's why does this tiny city produce not just these 2 players, but Cole Koepke at the Tampa Bay Lightning, all kinds of college stars, Hobie Baker winners, AHL players, ECHL players, players playing pro leagues overseas, and yet there's 10,000 of them in this big small town or little city. And they basically put it to me, it's like community. And I give so many examples in the piece, but one of them is Karen Pionk gets a phone call from her son, Joe, one day. He's 9 years old. He's at the rink in the warming shack. There's a free for use phone there. He's like, Mom, are you here yet? Are you coming? What's the deal? And she gets a sense, okay, what's the emergency? And he says, well, I've just been playing all day and I'm starving. And so she feels bad for him. It's like, okay, well, he needs a meal to keep playing before I can get home get over there from work. So she says, well, go look around to the rink. Are there any moms that we know? And so he goes and runs off. The phone's just like dangling from its wire. He comes back to the phone and tells Karen that, yeah, Patty Sandberg's here. And that's Dylan Sandberg's mom. So Karen says, okay, cool, no problem. Borrow some money from her. She'll feed you and tell her we're on our way. We'll get her right back. And it's like, how did those families then go on to be Winnipeg Jets families from that kind of childhood? It's just, there's so much magic in that town. I hope everybody who's listening goes on and reads it.
Yeah, everyone should read it. And we have to mention the Athletic Black Friday deal. If you're not a subscriber already, Murat, $1 a month for 12 months. So that's $12 to read what you got going on there. So definitely well worth it if anyone is looking to score a big deal during this deal season, right?
Yeah, buddy. Thanks for saying that. And absolutely. I mean, I happen to think the Athletic is worth its full price. And, I love that I get to do what I do, and it puts food on my table. And, I was going to say keeps the lights on here, but I got natural sunlight right now. So, we'll work on the lights thing in a second. But for $1 a month for 12 months, if you've never signed up, if you've never been at the Athletic, just, click your way through to one of my stories so I look good, sign up, and see what you're missing. Because we do get to do pretty cool things like drive out to Hermantown and spend the day with the Pionks and the Sandbergs.
That's pretty cool. I know you've done a lot of great profiles on Winnipeg Jets that aren't really time sensitive. So that is certainly one of them. And Murat, thank you so much for coming on. Always great talking to you on the show. And yeah, if you haven't already, follow him on Twitter at WPG Murat. Thank you so much. And I can't wait to catch up with you next week. What a great chat with Murat. And thanks to all the comments in the chat here who enjoyed the conversation. More of a big picture talk with the Jets. And thanks to everyone who's watching live. I know there's a big soccer match going on. And to be honest, I got it on a tablet in front of me. And it's pretty cool seeing Canada at the World Cup. Never seen this before in my lifetime. And if you are here, hey, hit the thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hitting the thumbs up. And hey, it helps our content be shown to more people across YouTube. And as we move on, coming up next, Darrin Bauming, he's going to stop in. I just have to mention from Jets practice today, Dylan DeMello in a yellow non-contact could be an option Friday. Adam Lowry didn't skate. He was under the weather. Stuff's going around, but he's good to go. Nikolai Ehlers was in Detroit this morning. He had sports hernia surgery. The timeline for recovery is 6 weeks. And Morgan Barron was on the ice in a non-contact jersey. He's recovering from wrist surgery. Connor Shafley Gagne, Perfetti Dubois Wheeler, Axel Janssen Fjallby, Lowry, Menelainen, Harkins, Gustafsson, Isimon, and these lines are from Scott Billeck, who'll be joining us later. Morrissey, Pionk, Schmidt, Dillon, Sandberg, Hainel, Connor Hellebuck in net. And we actually had some breaking news during that last conversation with Murat. Ryan Reeves acquired by the Minnesota Wild for a 2025 fifth-round pick. So I don't know if he'll be in the lineup tonight. We'll wait and see about that. But the Jets and Wild will be playing a couple more times this season. We'll be getting another look at Ryan Reeves. And I do remember him playing against the Jets in the Western Conference Final in 2018 and getting a lot of bad memories from that. And here we'll bring in Darrin, but first, here's Huss with a couple notes.
You missed it a little earlier this year. We've teamed up with Wallace & Wallace and Josh Morrissey for a program we're really proud of, the Wallace & Wallace Unsung Hero Program in support of the Dream Factory, which Josh is very much involved in. Hey, you know about the people that are making things happen quietly in our community volunteers, people taking care of those in need, people selflessly devoting their time and effort to make our community a better place. Not looking for recognition, but probably deserving it. We're calling on you, WST listeners, to nominate an unsung hero in your community by firing us an email and telling us a little bit about them at unsunghero@winnipegsportstalk.com. We're going to share some of these stories throughout the month. And at the end of the month, we'll be drawing for an unsung hero. And they will win an autographed jersey from Josh Morrissey. And from the WST listener recognizing our unsung hero, Wallace & Wallace is going to make a $500 donation, which in turn will be matched by Josh and Margot Morrissey in the name of the Winnipeg Sports Talk listener who submitted the nomination to another group of unsung heroes, the kids at the Dream Factory. If you go to the links in the description of today's show, or just go to winnipegsports.com/links, you can also click on what the Dream Factory's put up, a little bit more on the great work that they do, and an option if you'd like to support the Dream Factory with a donation, you can do that as well. All part of the program of the Unsung Hero. But again, give us your nominations, Unsung Hero at winnipegsportstalk.com. We can't wait to tell you about some of these great stories of people doing good things in the community, and obviously supporting such a great charity here that working with Josh Morrissey in the Dream Factory. All right, Vita Health Fresh Market. Hey guys, November is Men's Health Month. Choosing the right natural health products are key, and Vita Health carries everything you need to help relieve prostate issues, reduce stress, and support mental focus. From Canadian brands like Prairie Naturals, who donate a portion of sales to the Canadian Men's Health Foundation. But hey, there's a lot of sickness going around right now. If you're looking for the best prices on natural and organic supplements, beauty products, groceries, and Winnipeg's largest assortment of local products, you got to pop by Vita Health, a great local company, family owned and operated since 1936. If you can't make it down to the stores, check out their new fully shoppable website to buy online, schedule a delivery or in-store pickup. Vita Health Fresh Market, empowering people to lead healthy lives with 7 Winnipeg locations, including the newest store in Linden Ridge, and online at myvita.ca. And big announcement, if you haven't heard, the folks at Consolidated Supply, great friends of ours, have stepped up big time to help us launch the 12 Days of Marbles and the Marbles Tournament of Champions coming up in December when I am back. Now, we will do a marble race as normal today, but just to give you a heads up, come December, when I am back, we'll be doing 12 consecutive days with a marble race. We'll be qualifying 3 people in each race for our final race, which I believe is going to be scheduled for our final show of 2022. All the qualifiers will be in that final race, and our last act of business in the year of 2022 will be to race all the qualifiers, and the winner will receive a pair of Bomber season tickets courtesy of our friends at Consolidated Supply. Consolidated Supply, the leaders in spas and hot tubs, outdoor kitchens, small engine repair, and all things golf, irrigation, landscaping, and artificial turf. Find out more at cte.ca. What a lot of people don't know is that they are open to the public. So pop by, see Spicy, see Joe and the gang, 1395 Niagara Road East. But in the meantime, check out everything they can do for you at their relaunched website at cte.ca. Big thanks to Consolidated Supply, and cannot wait to get going with the Marbles Tournament of Champions coming up in December.
All right, thanks so much, Huss. And now we got to talk about it. I thought maybe we'd be having a parade this week. When I knew I was hosting this show, I thought we'd be celebrating, popping bottles, chanting, three-peat. I thought I'd be at a parade taking pictures, but unfortunately not, as the Winnipeg Blue Bombers were defeated on Sunday's Grey Cup by 1 point to the Toronto Argos. And we'll continue our aftermath with Darrin Bauming of Bonfire Sports. Darrin, thanks for coming on. How's it going? How are you feeling after that Grey Cup loss? We can dissect. I think we're going to be dissecting this one for a long time and wondering what could have been.
No, of course. You know, hindsight is always 20/20. So looking back on a game like that, you could look at a million different points in the 109th Grey Cup and say, well, if this went left, if this went right, if this went up or down, or went shook out a different way, you could have had a different result. How am I feeling though, Remo? Well, I came down with something like so many people really across the prairies right now are battling, right? I had a bit of a sinus issue, missed my ride for safety reasons with the Free Press and the Sun writers, drove out myself. Ken Weeb was battling some things too. He flew out a little bit late in the week. We drove back together prior to the Jets Hurricanes game. I'm still fatigued. Grey Cup week is long. It's hard. It's a grind. It's not a lot of sleep. It's a lot of hours and events and things to do. So I'm taking a couple days to rest. I think it's a bit of a blessing in disguise. The Jets are on the road, but that's not stopping us at Bonfire Sports. We're going to get into our final Bonfire midweek of the season live tonight at 7:30, and kind of look back on the year 2022 and the season that was, and Winnipeg falling 1 point short, or I guess 2 points short, as some of the players mentioned to me, of getting a third straight Grey Cup championship.
And I think that's the part that's got to sting the most, knowing you were that close to 3-time back-to-back-to-back Grey Cup champions. But I think when you watch the game and you saw some of the players yesterday say I think overall didn't execute. And as much as you hate saying that, I mean, I don't think it came down to one play. There's just so many different areas where they had opportunities, take advantage of mistakes from Toronto. I mean, and they were not able to. You can talk about the offense sputtering or allowing Chad Kelly to get that first down, which may have been the play of the game. And I was going to go with the I think that could have been it. Missing the extra point, missing the field goal at the end. Just seemed like there were just so many things that led up to this loss and not just one.
No, how about Dakota Prukop coming in on first down after the first play of a drive, goes for a 13-yard run for Brady Oliveira, and then they bring in Dakota Prukop to throw into double coverage. Inexplicable. I've talked to some football people since that time, and some of them understand. Some of them, put a little bit of reason behind it, and people are going to argue till their death about some of the decisions in that game, some of the ways things shook out, like you mentioned. I was talking to Willie Jefferson yesterday inside the Blue Bombers locker room, and he said, if I had that interception, then things would have been different in that game, And I said, well, it kind of reminds me of Odell Willis in the 2011 Grey Cup. And he said, you know what? I talked to Odell right after the game, and we talked about that. So if you're out there and a Bomber fan thinking about those moments and how they remind you of things, or how your assessment and minutia going down the list of all the things you think could have been different, the Bombers have done that and then some. They haven't dug into the film. I don't blame them. Get an opportunity to take a big exhale and digest the season that was. If you want to go back and look at that film, maybe you're a glutton for punishment. Maybe you just don't mind the pain. Maybe you just want to find out where you could have been better. But to a man, and I was inside that locker room in Regina, Remo, right after the game. And I remember being in Blue Bombers losing locker rooms of years past, those tough seasons through the early 2010s where they lost a lot of football games and the locker rooms were still open after games like that. This energy was very, very different. It was almost not just like feeling bad for themselves, like maybe of years past when they didn't have a good football team, but it was almost shock. It was almost regret. I'm asking the guys, you got a message for the Blue Bombers fans out there. Some of them said, I'm sorry, because they fully expected to go into that game, do what they do, and come out with a championship. They were the better team. A lot of the play calling, a lot of the sputtering on offense, like you mentioned about, a lot of the ways that they protected on offense for a pretty effective Toronto Argonauts defensive pass rush. Winnipeg's defense, maybe missing some tackles, missing some plays, special teams going back and forth, and, some really good things happen. Shane Gauthier with another game-saving tackle, making that 45-degree angle on the Toronto Argonauts returner. Reminds you of what he did against the Saskatchewan Roughriders a couple years ago. So, you can break it down into all the minutia that you want. In the end, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers in 2022 were the best team in the CFL, but all that matters is who won the final game, and the Toronto Argonauts were the best team in the CFL on Grey Cup Sunday. All credit to them. They went out there and they won, and they deserve to be the Grey Cup champs.
Well said. It's still, I got to be honest, I'm looking at Andrew Harris's Instagram pictures yesterday. I'm happy for him. I don't think it changes what the Bombers last offseason, and Brad Oliveira stepped in and was one of the standouts on Sunday. But it definitely, as much as Pinball Clemens is a CFL legend, and it's cool watching him sip out of the Grey Cup, I think this one's going to sting for a long time. And I mean, even 2 days, a couple days later at the locker cleanout yesterday, was there any difference in what you saw from the players? After having, I read that Patty Neufeld watched it like 4 or 5 times. I don't know how you could put yourself through that. And I think his comment was Jeff Hamilton was he wouldn't be able to sleep if he didn't. And the commitment that these guys have to their craft is incredible, and it just didn't work out on Sunday.
No question. The commitment, the dedication, the amount of work that they do to prepare for games, prepare for a season, that's between the ears. Then there's the work they do to prepare their bodies and the diet, the rest, the sleep, and then obviously the workout regimen and the rest. You think it's tough following a team all season and expecting your team to come away with a dynasty clinching third straight Grey Cup championship, and how disappointed you felt on Sunday or Monday. Imagine being somebody that put in work, not 9 to 5, but like 6 to midnight every single day, morning, noon, and night, living, breathing, and eating football, and doing it with that guy next to them, playing for that teammate, playing for that coach, playing for that personal pride, and playing for the fan base. Because Winnipeg Blue Bomber fans, I think, over the last 3-4 years, Remo, I don't think anybody would disagree. This fan base has been rejuvenated. This fan base has grown. The appreciation for the type of organization the Winnipeg Blue Bombers have become has grown. And, just the energy inside IG Field at those home games, or the energy at Mosaic for the 109th Grey Cup, and all those people in blue and gold that made their way to Regina for the game. That has all grown exponentially since this team began a championship run. Does one loss take that all away? In my opinion, no way at all. The Winnipeg Blue Bombers, I've had a lot of fans reach out to me and be like, it's too bad we couldn't get a dynasty in my lifetime. Or my dad said to me, it's too bad we couldn't get a dynasty in our lifetime. And I told that person, you tell your dad, buckle up. 2023 could bring a championship. And then you would say the Bombers went to 4 straight Grey Cups and won 3 of them. That's a dynasty. I don't think you can put it to bed that easily. But to get to your question, those players are going to handle the disappointment and the heartbreak of finishing a season with a loss for the first time in 3 seasons in 4 years. If you're a member of that Winnipeg Blue Bombers team, a lot of guys are going to handle it a lot of different ways. But in the end, free agency, the draft, just the reality of pro sports and the business that it is. They always say you're never going to be able to have that exact same mix inside a locker room from year to year. But Winnipeg has built something. Now, of course, we wait for head coach Mike O'Shea and some sort of announcement one way or another with his expiring contract.
I actually agree with you. I missed the memo, Darrin, where it came out in the dictionary and said a dynasty has to be 3 championships in a row. I had no idea that was the only way you could get a dynasty, by getting 3 championships in a row. They went to 3 straight Grey Cups. They won 2. They got a great group. You have that 2-time MOP. Don't think you can get back? How do you not call them a dynasty? They went to the championship game 3 times. So I agree with you. I didn't realize it was so binary if you get to 3 championships or not. And that I didn't realize everyone else seems to think that. I'm confused as well.
Well, you know what? On that point, we talked about it on our post-game show on Bonfire Sports. Mm-hmm. My co-host, who is a Blue Bombers super fan, compared to my objective take on the Canadian Football League, Zach Schnitzer, he wrote a piece in 3 Down Nation talking about gratitude and talking about putting things into perspective, right? Blue Bombers fans should be proud. This is not a team that just got to a Grey Cup, say like in 2011 or in 2007, and had heartbreak and disappointment. This is a team that has built something that's not going to go away. You mentioned the 2-time MOP back-to-back, Zach Collaros. He's under contract for the next 3 seasons. Brady Oliveira is 25 years old. The defense has a lot of good players. Willie Jefferson, I have little to almost no doubt he will re-sign in Winnipeg, where he will spend this winter, where he and his wife Kelly and his beautiful growing family will be here. They've moved here permanently. They're no longer Texans. They are Texans at heart, of course, but they are Winnipeggers through and through. So there is a lot of positivity to reflect on, and gratitude's an important thing. Mike O'Shea and the Winnipeg Blue Bombers talked about gratitude over the last 3 weeks, and I think that's important for the fan base here to also consider. This team has seen much, much darker days, and those Grey Cup moments much more fleeting. So yeah, I understand the disappointment of not getting that third straight Grey Cup is a tough one. But you think back to the last time the Winnipeg Blue Bombers were in 3 straight Grey Cups, 1958, 1959, winning both of those, and then losing to the Hamilton Tiger Cats in 1960. That fueled them to win the next 2 Grey Cups. And now we look back on the Kenny Payne era and the late 50s and 1960s, that golden era of Winnipeg Blue Bombers football, as 4 championships in 5 appearances, as one of the greatest eras in this franchise's history. We are in, arguably, and I think quite convincingly, arguably, a very similar era. So have some gratitude for that and enjoy how good this football club has been.
I'm enjoying. We hadn't had a Grey Cup champion here since 1991. It was incredible seeing them in the streets and the celebration they had last year. Disappointing that we're not going to have that this year. We're not having it. But we'll have to see moving forward. You mentioned Willie Jefferson. It sounds like that's getting worked out. He's moved here. No questions there. The big question, Mike O'Shea, and I'm really flip-flopping on what you think he's going to do. Seemingly, he could get a blank check anywhere in the league. But, the way they re-signed Collaros and some of his comments, you have to think that he's not back if O'Shea isn't back. And I'd like to think that they're going to find a way to get a deal done here at some point. But you have to think that's item number 1, or is it on Kyle Walters' to-do list?
Yeah, no question. I think it's absolutely job number 1 to accomplish, right? We asked Zach Collaros. He was asked, I can't remember who asked him, but in his final media availability yesterday at IG Field, they said, how important is Mike O'Shea to this entire operation? I think it was Paul Friesen of the Winnipeg Sun who asked that. And Collaros said, he's the most important. And Mike O'Shea will hate me for saying that, said Zach Collaros. So, it's of the hugest importance. I've never been an alarmist, Remo. I think you and my audience know that, right? I don't, try to spark something and make it bigger than it is. But the reality, in pro sports, we've seen stranger things. And until a name is written on a dotted line, Mike O'Shea's, availability to return is there, but it is not a for sure thing. And you're right, blank check across the league. There isn't one single CFL organization that wouldn't want Mike O'Shea inside their building. The reality is there's only a couple destinations in the CFL that need a new head coach: Ottawa, Montreal. There's only a couple destinations that I think would need an entire change and culture change. Of course, the coaching cap and football operations cap that the CFL employs is a factor in all of that. I expect Mike O'Shea to re-sign with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers for 2023. But will he sign a multi-year contract? Is he dedicated to be here to the long haul? The only truth we know is that there is nobody the Winnipeg Blue Bombers want except Mike O'Shea. So we will wait, and it will be tomorrow, that is Thursday, that Mike O'Shea will speak to the assembled media one final time this year.
The CFL, a lot of free agents, a lot of turnover every season. 3 Down Nation and John Hodge put out this list for the Bombers. A lot of players, Darrin: receiver, Bailey, Dembski, Ellingson, Grant; O-line, Bryant, Couture, Hardrick, Neufeld; D-line, Adams, Jeffcoat, Jefferson, who we talked about, Sales, Thomas; linebacker, Big Hill, Briggs, Gauthier, Morrow, Kyrie Wilson. Who else? Defensive back, Alden Darby, Lawrence, Maston, Rose, Taylor.
It's almost easier to name who isn't on that list.
Yes, it almost
right?
is. I mean, what do you make of this? how do you see this shaking out here with this free agent group? That's
Well, for those that have been watching closely, we know this is the reality in the Canadian Football League. It is a league of 1 year and 2 year contracts. And is that something the CFL has been working to remedy? Yes. The Players Association and the league in this most recent collective bargaining agreement did bring in, some factors in that bargaining agreement to allow teams to have contracts that are of longer term, that have some guaranteed money. That's always been the push-pull of signing a longer-term contract. If you're, say, for example, Marcus Sayles, who played for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, won a Grey Cup, went to the NFL, came back from the NFL, and signed a 3-year contract with the BC Lions. Well, Marcus Sayles could get cut tomorrow, and in no way, shape, or form am I saying he would be, because especially the last month of the season, Marcus Sayles really came on and played extremely well. But individuals like that sign long-term deals, there's no real assurance like you would get, say, in the National Hockey League, that if you sign for 3 years, you're going to get paid that full amount for 3 years. Coaches in the Canadian Football League do. General managers in the Canadian Football League do. But until this season, and until some of the contracts we saw re-signed during the season in 2022, that has never been the case. So adding that guaranteed money to some of the contracts, even just a fraction of it, does keep teams a little bit more accountable and committed to those athletes on the field. So will that lead to longer term deals? Maybe you take a little bit less money overall, but a little bit more guaranteed. We'll see how that shakes out, in the years to come and really through this offseason. But for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, difficult decisions to make. A lot of their best players are well into their 30s. The offensive line probably needs to be reworked. Stanley Bryant said it when he went up there and got his 4th straight offensive lineman, most outstanding offensive lineman award in the CFL, 4th of his career, more than anybody ever. He said, "I'll see you guys next year." Is that with Winnipeg? I'm sure he would like that. Same with Jamarcus Hardrick. He kind of grabbed me and gave me a one-armed bear hug, which really, you got to be Jamarcus Hardrick to be able to do that to anybody, just one arm. But he said, "You know what? I sure hope to see you next year, DB." And when you see that love for the organization spill onto us nobodies in the media, it says a lot about how much they enjoy being with this organization. But as is a reality of any team, a winning team, a struggling franchise, a champion, or a first overall draft pick team, you never know what's going to happen. Tough decisions need to be made. And especially in pro football, those young players are going to come in and take jobs of veterans. It's inevitable.
Yeah, after the last 2 Grey Cups, they were able to bring a large part of the team back and go at it again. We'll see if they can do it get back 4th Grey Cup in a row. Darrin, thank you so much for coming on. Great talking Bombers with you, and hope to keep it up the road. The Jet season and the Bomber off season, as I know we'll be having some signings trickling in before we know it. Thanks again, Darrin.
Yeah, you got it, Remo. Lots of stuff coming to Bonfire this winter. So everybody out there, Thanks for joining us all year, and stay tuned. More to come. Yeah,
Darrin doing a great job. Bonfire Sports on YouTube. Search for it and check him out on Twitter at Darrin Bauming. Thanks again, Darrin. Appreciate it. All right, we got Scott Billeck coming up. He's in Minneapolis, or sorry, St. Paul. You don't want to get them confused. People in St. Paul and Minneapolis don't like that. But he's at the Jets skate. We'll hear from him about the lineup. But before that, Hustlers got a message, and then we'll bring in Scotty. Stay tuned.
Not AutoCorp, great sponsors of ours since day one here on Winnipeg Sports Talk, and the place to start any search for a new vehicle, or if you're considering upgrading your vehicle. Speaking of upgrading, if you're thinking about selling your vehicle, the Not Experts are the consignment experts here in Winnipeg. They'll help you take all the hassle of selling your vehicle out, get the best price possibly for it, and of course, also help you get into the new car of your dreams. Why not get into the car you've always wanted with the help of the Not team at a great price at Not AutoCorp? And folks, don't forget, with winter here, if you haven't yet got your winter tires on, what are you waiting for? Winter tire specials and the MPI payment plan now at Not. Why not get safe winter tires and pay later at Not AutoCorp? Find them online at not.ca, or pop down and see them in person at Waverly and McGillivray, and tell them your boys at Winnipeg Sports Talk sent you. Folks, I'm sure I'm getting a few comments in the chat about this nice Canada shirt I've got. Are you ready for Canada in the World Cup? Get the red on. And man, Royal Sports has the best selection I've seen anywhere of Team Canada gear for the World Cup. Alphonso Davies jerseys, Estacio, Jonathan David, and more. Hoodies, toques, scarves, everything you need to show your national pride as Canada returns to the World Cup for the first time since 1986. And with the holidays just around the corner, you can pretty much bang off all of your holiday shopping for the sports fans in your life at Royal Sports. Thousands of pieces of Jets merchandise, Bomber gear, and more. Blue Jays, Raptors, NFL, you name it. And of course, Royal is the undisputed, undefeated heavyweight champ of all things hockey as well. Family owned for over 40 years. Popeye, C. Gerald, Greg, and their great staff. 750 Pembina Highway. And of course, follow them on Instagram at Royal Sports Pembina for the latest merchandise drops and sale information. Hey, holidays coming up, a new year just around the corner. Guys, thinking about maybe upgrading that wardrobe you've been putting off? Well, don't wait any longer. Pop on down and see Andrew and the gang at F Apparel at 190 Smith Street for the new wardrobe for the new you. Custom suits beginning at just $400. The entire process so quick and easy. Pop in, quick few measurements, decide your color, fabrics, pattern, style, and a few weeks later, you've got a beautiful new suit from F Apparel. And hey, if you are in a wedding party or thinking about getting married and getting some of the fellas in to stand up for you, do not waste your money renting tuxes for your big day. Go to F Apparel, get custom suits for all the guys. And right now, if you book in and get measured by the end of November, everyone in the wedding party will get 10% off and a free shirt, savings of about $130 per person. Pop on down to F Apparel, 190 Smith Street. Find out more information or book an appointment online at that's EPHapparel.com.
All right, thank you very much, Huss. Love seeing all the comments in the chat. Huss is just such a pro. Had to let him do the ad reads. I got a lot going on back here, but happy to bring in Scott Billeck, who's confirmed to me he is in Minneapolis, not St. Paul. You can't get them. I think it was at the NHL draft in 2011. Chevy said, "I want to thank the people of Minneapolis for hosting the draft at Xcel Energy Center in St. Paul." And he actually got booed briefly from that. You can't mix them up; they get mad. But so let's hear how was the skate this morning. I know we got some injury updates. We can start off with Nikolai Ehlers, who I think we have more of a timeline on his injury.
Yeah, I mean, so you obviously had Sean Reynolds kind of tweet out that he had surgery today in Detroit. I think Sean actually saw Ehlers in the airport or something like that yesterday on his way to Minnie. So Ehlers was flying first class to Detroit, I think, to get that done. But anyways, he had it today, obviously successful. The Jets are expecting him. So Rick Bowness, it's weird because I don't think Rick Bowness actually had heard the update on Ehlers. So he was still saying, like, I don't know, it was a bit of a jumble. It was like 8 weeks and then like 7 to 10. And so we were joking at lunch today that the only week that it's not that we've heard is 9 weeks. So don't expect him to be out 9 weeks. But yeah, no, it looks like Ehlers. I mean, if it's 6 weeks, as Sean reported, I mean, that's best case scenario for a sports hernia surgery. I mean, the timeline's usually kind of between 6 and 12 weeks. So, but you know, with all these things, it's not just about successful surgery. It's always about, you know, how a guy recovers, how long it takes for him to get skating again. And with a, you know, groin or lower abdomen surgery like that, I mean, that's kind of a core kind of area that a guy like Nikolai Ehlers for sure utilizes in terms of how speedy he is and that sort of thing. So, but yeah, if it's 6 weeks, I mean, that's best case scenario for the Jets. I mean, at that point, at it today, he's back in time for the new year, and that'd be a big boon for this Jets team. That's 11-5-1 right now, heading into the game tonight in Minnesota.
Yeah, I'm trying to do the math here. When you say 6 and 8 weeks, let's say 8 weeks is 2 months. Well, we're at November 23, then December 23, and maybe, you know, mid-January. Or late January. I mean, if you get him before February, I think that's a bonus. When you first heard surgery, you think, well, he's going to be out February, March. We'll have something to monitor, but I know that you mentioned U.S. Thanksgiving tomorrow. The Jets in a
Yeah.
playoff spot, so we can put them in the playoffs at the end of the year. They fulfilled prophecy. Work is done. But you had a nice column there at the Sun about just what have you seen from the change from last year to this year that has put a team with a lot of the same guys, but with much better results?
Yeah, well, it's been kind of night and day, right? I mean, that's the thing. Like, arguably, and that's kind of what I wrote, is that this team is less talented this year because you lose Andrew Kopp, you lose Paul Stastny. I mean, you lose about 40 goals there, roughly. And I think somewhere around 80 points, 70, 80 points. But what this team has gained, with the sum of its parts at this point is, last year's team was, whatever you want to call it, fractured, disjointed, disconnected, whatever words you want to put it. They weren't all playing on the same page. This year, I mean, that's where they are. They're playing on the same page this year. And they're playing within a system that I think complements a lot of what these guys do. It's interesting to me that Mark Scheifele is back to being Mark Scheifele, but it's that Mark Scheifele's offensive game hasn't suffered because he's had to play some defensive hockey. And vice versa, Josh Morrissey's defensive game hasn't suffered because he's been up in the play leading this team in scoring this season. And so Rick Bowness has kind of found this kind of not weird, but like this really good sweet spot for this team, for the guys on the team. He's been able to extract enough from them that they'll play within his system, but is also kind of giving them what he likes to call the green light. And that's on forward and defense. We hear it a lot on defense, but there's a lot of green light on forward to also be creative and kind of find ways to, make plays and score goals. But, I find it kind of fascinating how we go from, this team that it was almost like you had to teach this team about fundamental hockey, right? Like a forward covering off a defenseman, if the defenseman kind of moved up into play. And it's like you go back to last year and it was just so chaotic on the ice for this team. And now you have a team that's really just playing a disciplined brand of hockey on the ice. And it hasn't been perfect yet. No, like it hasn't been perfect. I mean, there's been there's been times where it's looked really bad. I mean, Las Vegas, the Vegas Golden Knights game there, where they lost, I think it was 4-2 in the end, and the LA game, which they ended up winning, but got outplayed. But you can't really say this year the Jets have really been out of a game. And even look in the game the other night against Carolina, where they give up those 3 goals. You see a certain level of resiliency there that's different than in years past, where, the old saying of staying in the fight and all that kind of stuff. Maybe the Jets did get a little bit saved by the bell there, but also they weren't going to be down 6-on-5 for the rest of the game once they tied it up, once Carolina tied it up. And I thought the Jets showed a lot of character in that team that whether it was Dylan Sandberg or some of the younger guys kind of just saying the right things on the bench before overtime. And then you go in overtime and you kind of, a nice save from Dave Riddick early on. And then, you spring Josh Morrissey on that breakaway for the winner. But, there's a lot of confidence in this team within themselves. And I think that's maybe the biggest thing that Rick Bowness has brought to this team is like, there's a sense of purpose and a sense of like, if I put, if I'm speaking from Rick Bowness, if I put you in this spot, I know that you can do it. And it really seems like a lot of the guys on this team have really caught on to that, really appreciated that. I was talking to, who was it the other day? Was it Brendan Dillon maybe or something like that? But, just saying like some of these guys needed a fresh start. And then you kind of, just figure, it was Paul Stastny actually when he was here on Saturday. And he was like, it just almost seemed after 8 years, some of these guys had always had Paul Maurice for their whole career. And for some people, it was good for them to have a good, like a fresh start, the new coach with the new system, just a fresh set of eyes on things. And I think that's kind of opened up a lot of eyes within that dressing room. And, you look at the record, 11-5-1 at the moment, fighting for first in the Central. I don't know if everybody would have expected this sort of thing. kind of coming into the season. But this team is slowly starting to come together where I think there's something actually real here instead of, I don't think the Jets have just cobbled together this record off of, just sheer talent and scoring ability alone. I think this is a team that's really kind of bought into a certain way of playing, and they're able to play that way to win hockey games. And that's from what I've seen through the first 16, 17 games here, it bodes well going forward, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with you. They had the rough games in LA and Vegas, but they certainly have turned around. I think at home they've been much better on the road, and they found ways to win when they're not playing their best. And I know Dom at The Athletic, I think he had them to start the season. I'm looking, under 50% to make the playoffs. He actually had them at 30% to make the playoffs, according to his model. But now he's got them at 72%, and we're approaching U.S. Thanksgiving tomorrow. Big match tonight. Sorry, I'm calling it a match, right? Because I'm in soccer mode.
Yeah.
Against the Minnesota Wild, division rival. But one player who won't be returning the lineup, Dylan DeMello, and Ville Heinola is going to get another shot. What do you think of Heinola's last game, and what did they say about Dylan DeMello's injury?
Yeah, so DeMello, he skated today in the red non-contact, as did Morgan Barron, actually. Who's still coming back from wrist surgery. One of the two guys on this team that's had wrist surgery this season now. But yeah, Dylan DeMello possibly for Friday, but it didn't really sound like Rick Bowness was too kind of sure on that. Sounds like he possibly could be an option for Sunday. With this upper body injury, I don't think any of us really know where this injury actually is, but it's I suspect that maybe Sunday at the earliest. Didn't sound like Friday was going to really be an option. But yeah, Ville Heinola obviously came on the ice, and you're kind of wondering, what are they going to put Kyle Capobianco back in? You looked at Billy's game on a couple of nights ago, and Rick Bowness, I think it summed it up kind of well this morning when I was talking to him about it. It was he had a bit of a tentative start, I suppose, to the game. A little bit hesitant on certain couple things, but started to work into the game, started to get that confidence. The one thing that Ville Heinola doesn't have that a lot of these other guys have had is, just a stretch of time to actually get accustomed to playing in the NHL. I talked to him a little bit about that this morning. I did a bit of a one-on-one with Ville, so it'll be coming up later today. But, just talking to Ville about kind of the confidence. And he's like, yeah, I don't have a lot of it right now. Kind of sounds a little bit of like Patrick Laine. And it's like, well, yeah, it's a tough game when you don't play, called up. Haven't played a lot in the last few years. This stretches all the way back to 2019 where he made the team out of training camp. And then just has kind of floated around in this kind of, nothingness since then, really. He's gotten a little bit of time here and there, but never really has been given that kind of stretch to kind of stretch his wings out. And I think with, Rick Bowness here giving him another game, one of it was, he wants to see more. He wants to see more confidence tonight against the Wild and that sort of thing. But I think that's the type of thing, the longer that DeMello's out, because, the reality is here, I think, either Capobianco or Ville Heinola, I think the reality is at this point, once Dylan DeMello comes back, Ville's getting pushed out of the lineup. But this is Ville's opportunity again to kind of try and cobble together some good film in a couple of games where he can, have that for Rick Bowness, that Rick Bowness can look at and have some confidence to put Ville in the lineup. I think Ville should be playing a little bit more. I think, one thing we've learned about Ville Heinola is when he plays in the AHL for an extended period of time, he gets used to that and he becomes more confident in himself playing that game. I don't see why that wouldn't be the case in the NHL. He has, the smarts, the vision, all those types of things that can be, that make him successful in the NHL. But, I think the one thing that's kind of evaded him that hasn't, for the likes of Logan Stanley or Dylan Samberg and those guys is, It's just that, that run of 10 to 15 games to kind of put a good body of work together. So I think there's, I know there's going to be a lot of people in the chat and a lot of Jets fans on social media and just everything that are really clamoring for this. They want to see this guy play a bit more. So we'll see what happens here. I mean, Billy was going to have to again, he's being asked to kind of do a lot in a short period of time here. But we'll kind of see what happens here when Dylan DeMello comes back. I suspect Billy goes back out of the lineup, but a good game. Anything can happen, I suppose.
Yeah, and you mentioned Morgan Barron. He's getting non-contact. Do we have a timeline on him? Because
it was 4 to 5 weeks since whenever he had his surgery. I can't remember the date of his surgery. It was like 2 or 3 weeks ago now. The interesting thing that I saw him doing today, and the first thing you wonder, okay, guy had wrist surgery. You're wondering, okay, is he going to take some shots, or is he just out there to kind of work on his cardio and get his legs under him again? No, right off the gate, I mean, he goes and takes a nice shot, and like there was pressure. I mean, you saw the stick bend, right? Like, wasn't like he was just trying to whatever. So I'm interested to know. I mean, we could be 1 to 2 weeks out here, I think, between that timeline. I think it was 3 weeks ago that he had his surgery, if I'm not mistaken. Might be 2.5 at this point. But either way, I mean, I think he's getting closer to a return. Which again, this bottom six has done well in his absence. I mean, and same with Mason Appleton, obviously Nikolai Ehlers, as we talked about earlier. But I think this team will, especially Adam Lowry, will like having a Morgan Barron back by his side sooner rather than later. I don't think you can really expect it on this trip. The Jets won't skate again in earnest, at least in a practice, until Saturday at the United Center in Chicago. So I suspect Morgan Barron, will see how today went, how the wrist kind of responds to the skate today, and then from there kind of go and see where they can go and how they can kind of push his recovery forward, I suppose.
Yeah, I like how they send the guys on the road trip. Hasn't been on the road trip yet. Put them on for the skate. Yeah. Get tired sitting at home in minus whatever weather with the snow. Nice to get out, see some other cities. And Barron quietly has 4 points in 9 games, which is a bit more than some of the other guys playing in the bottom six. And with Ehlers out and himself out and Appleton out, they're going with Sam Gagner on the top line. I wonder if they're seeing that as like a short to medium term solution here as Ehlers is out. I don't know. What have you thought of? Is this a long term thing here with Gagner on the top line?
It's a good question, right? Like, I mean, I think they're going to roll with it for now. It hasn't been bad. One of the things that I kind of worried about Sam Gagner was the speed. Was he going to be able to keep up? And I think the one thing that Rick Bowness liked with the Appleton on that line with Ehlers out was just the tenacity on the forecheck, right? Getting in quick and getting the puck and then trying to win it for either Kyle Connor or Mark Scheifele to kind of go to work with it. But I don't see the only one, and I'm curious about it. We've seen Mikey Esamont go from the Manitoba Moose to the Winnipeg Jets on the third line. I am curious to see if they try and put him up on the top line at some point. He's the type of player that Rick Bowness likes in terms of the way that he gets onto the puck real quick, uses his speed, and that sort of thing. And I'm kind of wondering, well, is he kind of like a mini Mason Appleton in that point? Would they put him up there to see? I don't think we're going to see Brad Lambert called up at any point soon. And if it's only 6 weeks for Ehlers here, like we talked about earlier, perhaps they just try and figure it out with Sam Gagner there. So it'd be interesting. I mean, I think the problem with with all of this right now is that the Jets are still winning. They're still putting together, stringing together some wins, building points putting points in the bank and that sort of thing. So there hasn't been any kind of losing adversity with some of the lines that they've had so far that would, maybe necessitate a change. I'd be curious to see if the Jets have, the Jets have taken calls on defensemen, but what does that look like? Would they, if Ehlers again? I think if Ehlers was going to be out for a lot longer than what's at this point kind of projected, Perhaps the Jets would have maybe look to make a change there, maybe trade out a defenseman to try and add some forward depth. But at this point, I mean, yeah, I think I think Rick Bowness is happy with what he sees on that top line. And, if anything, the thing with Rick Bowness is he's like he'll change the lines if he doesn't like what he sees. And he does it in game sometimes. Sometimes he goes back to the old line. Sometimes he keeps the ones that he has. But right now, I think he's happy with what he's seen from Scheifele, Connor, and Sam Gagner there. And I wonder too at times, perhaps you could be even at one point or another, if you needed to, at least in game, maybe even move Pierre-Luc Dubois up to the wing. To play with Mark Scheifele. They did that in the first season when Dubois got here after the Line trade. And I know those two like to play with each other. So, I mean, I guess you could do that if you're going in search of some goals. But, the Jets, are kind of middle of the pack, I think, right now in goals for per game. But, they haven't been hurting when they four goals for the most part. So, I think Rick Bowness is happy with where he's at right now. I mean, it's hard again. If you use the old Bill Parcells quote, "As the record doesn't lie," I think they're happy with where they're at as a team. Obviously, still hungry to keep getting better and that sort of thing. But the kind of old adage, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I think that kind of applies right now to Rick Bowness and his team.
All right, last one before we go. This upcoming road trip, what do you make of the opponent tonight in Minnesota? Big divisional matchup on Friday, the annual Black Friday game, although this one's in the evening against Dallas, and Saturday in Chicago.
Yeah, I mean, this is a good opportunity for the Jets to stack up some points and possibly even take over first place in the Central from Dallas. Tonight, here's how it's going in Minnesota. Minnesota Wild are starting Sam Steele at the top as their top line center tonight. It's kind of been going that way. It's a team. They're 500, so it's possible they just traded, I believe, for Ryan Reeves.
Yep.
So they're looking for some grit there. I don't think Reeves will be in the lineup tonight for them unless somebody's said that he will be. I haven't seen anything on that. So I think this is a winnable game. I think Chicago is a winnable game too. It's really Friday's game that's probably the most intriguing. I mean, these two teams have faced each other twice now this season. I believe they're both 4-1 victories, if I'm not sure, one for each. And so it's kind of that, I think that's the game that, both teams will kind of have pegged on their on the calendar as, a big one on this road trip. And it's the one that I'm kind of most intrigued of because I thought they've matched up well, the Stars and the Jets this season. It's been fun hockey to watch. Minnesota and Chicago, those are the teams that you should be beating. And for the most part, the Jets are beating the teams that they should be beating this season. So, I think it's a good chance to, take 4 of 6 on this and possibly even 6 of 6 on this road trip and start building. Brendan Dillon talked a little bit about this morning. It's hard to get separation at this point, but if you string a few, wins on this road trip together, you can start maybe doing that, at least creating separation between you and the wild card teams, between 3rd and 4th in the Central Division standings and that sort of thing. So, yeah, it should be a good trip. Be at the Cowboys game tomorrow too, so that's gonna be kind of. So
I was gonna ask you about your Thanksgiving plan. That's pretty good Thanksgiving plans. Wow.
Yeah, it might be some Terry Black's barbecue or Pecan Lodge in Dallas, and then some. Yeah, it's supposed to rain. I think it's 100% chance of rain in Dallas tomorrow, and they're supposed to get like something like 30 millimeters, 40 millimeters, something like that. I don't know how much tailgating we'll be doing, but definitely going to be in the building tomorrow in Jerry's World down there in Dallas.
Yeah, you and like 100,000 other rabid Cowboys fans.
So yeah, it's going to be crazy.
Well, Scott, thanks so much for coming on. Great talking to you. And looking forward to catching up again next week. And enjoy the game time. Enjoy that barbecue in Dallas.
Will do.
All right.
Never turn down some good barbecue.
No,
man.
Definitely not. All right. See ya.
All right. Have a good one.
There he is, Scott Billeck, Winnipeg Sun. Check him out on Twitter at Scott Billeck, and the Jets are in St. Paul tonight to take on the Minnesota Wild, and we'll be hearing about the visitors next with Jessi Pierce from the Bardown Beauties podcast. But first, Huss has got a couple messages.
Have to thank Princess Auto for their phenomenal support of Winnipeg Sports Talk. And of course, Bomber fans know Princess Auto was there for the blue and gold all year long and setting up the best pregame atmosphere in the Canadian Football League at the Princess Auto tailgate zone. Cannot wait to get back there next June. Of course, we'll be working with Princess Auto throughout the year, as well as focusing on some of the top curlers in the country and in the world right here from Manitoba, many of them on Team Princess Auto. And of course, Princess Auto is the place where you'll find the best assortment and value of tools and equipment around. Everything you need to complete the projects on your list or start something new is at Princess Auto. 2 Winnipeg locations, Panet Road, Portage Avenue West, and you can always shop online 24/7, 365 at princessauto.com. And also, I mean, hey, we're getting into the holidays, and then we're talking about drinks and entertaining. Hey, one thing that everybody needs, water and water services. And the family-owned gang at Culligan have been the water experts for over 60 years here in the city and province. And they really do have everything. Water softeners, filters, bottled water coolers, drinking full home systems, drinking water systems, and of course, those jugs with the Culligan men taking them out to you anywhere in the city and surrounding area. Whatever your water needs, Culligan's got you covered. 1200 Sargent Avenue. You can give them a call at 694-5180 or check out what Culligan's got going online at drinkculligan.com. And well, it's very dry here, both in the air and in the social areas. It certainly won't be as we get into the holidays, and when you're entertaining and looking for the best Canadian whiskey, everyone knows Canada's favorite is Canadian Club. Not only a great sponsor of us, but also the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, and what a great season that was, and great to see so many people enjoying the Canadian Club and Ginger Ale, which was an incredibly popular selection at Bomber games this season. But hey, just because the Bomber season's over doesn't mean you can't pick it up. CC and Ginger available in 6-packs at your local beer store, and pop by your local Manitoba liquor marts for all the great products from the Canadian Club family. Canadian Club, give them a follow on Instagram as well, and shout out to everyone that sent us pictures of them enjoying the CC and Ginger throughout the Bombers season.
Oh, thank you so much, Huss, for doing such a bang-up job on those ad reads. And yes, he is in the World Cup in Qatar right now watching Team Canada. They're losing 1-0 to Belgium. Anyways, happy to bring in my next guest from the Bardown Beauties podcast at NHL.com, Score North. She's got a long resume. Jessi Pierce on the Minnesota Wild. Jessi, thank you so much for hopping on. Great to have you back on the program. How are things in Minnesota?
Heck yeah, I also have Mom on the resume too. I had to open up some candy to try to keep him at bay while Mom does some work from home. But he's repping the Minnesota Vikings, so always a sports household here. Things are going well. Thanks for having me, Michael. Appreciate it.
Yeah, well, we have some breaking Minnesota Wild news came up in the chat. Acquiring Ryan Reeves for a 2025 5th-round draft pick. How come they're going after Ryan Reeves at this point of the season?
I mean, a great question. That's definitely an acquisition you think you make, past trade deadline, around trade deadline, around that time when you're making a final push. Need that grittiness, need that toughness. In the Minnesota Wild, do need that. Not to say, Marcus Foligno's kind of been that go-to guy, as well as Jordan Greenway, who now makes his return for the second time this year after injury. He's always kind of been a physical presence as well. I think Ryan Reeves brings a lot of energy. Aside from the fights, you've always kind of seen him as that locker room guy. If he's on your team, you love him, right? And you hate to play against him. So I'm thinking that's probably a little bit what Bill Guerin had in mind by going out and making this acquisition. From the New York Rangers standpoint, they get to free up a little bit of money. I believe they're all in on that Patrick Kane look, so we'll see what happens there. I don't hate it. Instant reaction. It's odd. It's cheap, I guess. There's that. But I think looking at what the Minnesota Wild need, they need an offensive player that can score, and Ryan Reaves doesn't really fill that top 6 forward role. So I am curious to see what transpires, what Bill Guerin might have been thinking, what Dean Evson thinks, and what that means for other forward players like young guys like Marco Rossi, who still hasn't quite found his role on this team. So a lot of implications with the Ryan Reaves trade. Again, from the energy standpoint, awesome. But that's about it. I think, again, there are bigger worries and concerns for this Minnesota Wild organization right now.
Yeah, Minnesota currently sitting 6th place in the Central Division, 8-2. And, they say U.S. Thanksgiving, if you're in the playoffs, you're going to be in the playoffs at the end of the season. They are not in the playoffs right now. I can't imagine that's where they thought they would be based on, last year, which was such a great season. I mean, what's happened? What's the story of the Minnesota Wild season leading up to this? How are they, out of the playoffs right now?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different contributing factors, as always, as every team can point to. I think you look at last year, and for me, last year, even as great as it was, a franchise best regular season, never mind the first round playoff exit that still happened following that, it was an anomaly. It was going to be a year that was hard to replicate. Not only were you going to lose Kevin Fiala in the offseason due to that cap restriction, but you were expecting big career years out of players like Ryan Hartman, who is currently injured. Marcus Foligno was going to have a career year. Jordan Greenway, Joel Eriksson, all these players you were expecting to produce at that same pace. It just seemed very unrealistic to me. So in addition to losing the 80+ points that Fiala brought, you are not getting any offense from any of those secondary scorers. Kirill Kaprizov, Matt Zuccarello still remain your top players. They're still on that top line. But beyond that, the scoring just has not come easy. The first couple games, really, really tough defensively and in net. Marc-Andre Fleury allowing 14 goals in the first 2 games. But it seemed like for this Minnesota Wild's team so far this season, when one problem is fixed, another one pops up. So it started out goaltending was bad. That's been fixed. Then it moved to defense. Defense struggled. That was fixed. Now the focus is on the offense. I think Minnesota's kind of still trying to find their identity. Again, going back to last year, they were this energetic, sexy, high-scoring offensive team, and that's never been them. That's never been the Minnesota Wild as we've known them, and that certainly isn't this team this year. So I think they're trying to figure out who they are, what they want to build upon. I think you look back to the win against Carolina this past weekend at home, and I think that gritty 3-2 game is more of what you're going to expect to see. You're not going to see 4, 5, 6, 7 goals from Minnesota. You're going to see 1, 2, 3 needing to be the winner. So, it's a team that is off to a slow start. It could be worse, but they really need to start kind of running the table because, as you mentioned, where they're sitting right now is not going to posture themselves well for a playoff run.
Yeah, the Jets and the Wild always have spirited games. I do remember Marcus Foligno with the Superman punch last year in a fight versus Brendan Dillon, which was so ridiculous. You wonder if you see any fireworks tonight. I'm looking at the lineup. You mentioned Kaprizov and Zuccarello. Those guys kind of attach at the hip, but Sam Steele, it's kind of been he's lining up with them tonight. It's been a rotating cast there with those guys. What can we see from the lines and the top line tonight?
Yeah, I think it's hard to play between a Kirill Kaprizov and Matt Zuccarello, right? I mean, Dean Evson had joked yesterday, I would have loved that opportunity because they do elevate your play. You have to be a very smart player. And they're having a difficult time just finding that right fit. Again, Ryan Hartman was that guy last year. He's been out with injury for some time and isn't due to return anytime soon. So they've been kind of just trying different pieces there. Sam Steele, the latest one, he played particularly well in his first go at it last weekend against Carolina. He gets on the score sheet with a goal and an assist as well. I think the tough thing about Kaprizov and Zuccarello is those two are constantly looking for each other without really looking for that third line mate or having that third line mate that forces them to look outside of the scoring area. So I think Sam Steele has kind of forced them to look at other options aside from one another. The rest of the lines, also another rotating cast. Again, when things aren't going right, it's hard to stick to what you know. And I think that's especially hard for Dean Evson, who is so used to trying to stick to what he knows. We mentioned Marcus Foligno. Generally, him, Joel Eriksson, and Jordan Greenway were that identity line, that big, tough, physical line that you could always count on, the very consistent line to go against any team's top players. Jordan Greenway has been hurt. Joel Eriksson and Marcus Foligno were broken up for a good amount of time. They're kind of now slowly getting back in the rhythm. So it's been a rotating cast all around. But again, it's something you can't disagree with because the offense in general just not quite clicking to where it needs to be, not up to the speed that it needs to be. And you're relying on a lot of young guys to step up and help make this team achieve even a a fraction of what they did last year. So it should be an interesting game. I know I told you before, Michael, I love this Winnipeg game against Minnesota, not especially when they beat the Wild, but, as long as it's a good feisty game, it's always it's a fun one to watch.
It's one of my favorite rivalries, at least for the Jets. I know there's a lot of Minnesota fans who come here. Jets fans will probably be hearing True North chant during the anthem before. People want to maybe get the Jets and Vikings back to back and maybe do some Black Friday shopping there this week. I have to ask you about goaltending. A big trade in the offseason. Cam Talbot traded to Ottawa. They go in with Marc-Andre Fleury, but he's out tonight. And Filip Gustavsson is getting the start. What's the story with the Minnesota goaltending, and when can we see Marc-Andre Fleury back?
It would not surprise me if we see Marc-Andre Fleury back in the crease come as soon as Friday. If he gets a practice in tomorrow, I think he'll be good. He's been practicing on his own. He took some shots yesterday at practice, kind of after practice concluded. So he really hasn't been in a full practice mode yet, but I think he only needs one, which again, if they do that tomorrow, would not surprise me if he slots in against Toronto. He suffered an upper body injury in their game against Nashville, so he's been out just a couple games here. But credit to Filip Gustavsson, who has really kind of stepped up. I mean, coming into this year, it was very well known that Marc-Andre Fleury was going to take the lion's share of the starts. He was going to be the number one. It wasn't going to be a 1A, 1B situation as it had been with Cam Talbot. It was going to be Marc-Andre Fleury's net, and Filip Gustavsson was going to have to step in to kind of relieve. But Filip Gustavsson has had to step in and not just relieve now. He needs to win these games. And again, that Carolina game was the probably best all-around Minnesota game, but one of Filip Gustafsson's best games. He's looked very steady, very calm in net, and I think the defense feels just as comfortable with him back there as well. So while I think everybody's very excited to get Flower back in the crease, credit to Gus for holding his own and helping the Minnesota Wild kind of get through these tough couple games.
Yeah, Fleury got off to a rough start, but it certainly righted the ship there before his injury. And you are in Minnesota. I do have to ask you, I know there's a lot of Vikings fans here. We're all wondering what was that on Sunday? What happened there? Beatdown.
It's the life of a Minnesota sports fan now. Come on. That's just what we do. We were all elated, excited, best football game ever against Buffalo. Why not do it against Dallas? And you just drop a big old dud. It is seriously the peak Minnesota thing to happen. I mean, we're lucky that Justin Jefferson didn't get hurt or something, because that would be even more peak Minnesota. A rough go. Hopefully they can, take a page out of a hockey book and say, you know what, throw it away. We're back at it again on Thursday, and hopefully can make some Thanksgiving feasts here in the States and in Minnesota particularly go over very well.
Yeah, big game tomorrow evening against the New England Patriots. Looking forward to that. You say Minnesota sports fan. I remember, I think when one of the most recent losses, someone's got a Twitter list of like going back 30 years of Minnesota sports disappointment. And I know there's a lot of people here close to the Twins and the Vikings, and you Wild as well. We know what's going on. Hopefully they can get a winner one of these days.
It would be nice. It would. I mean, then we don't have anything to talk about except the weather. So, I think we need to constantly have something to complain about outside of it being freezing cold. And Minnesota sports tend to do that for us.
There you go. Well, thank you so much, Jessi, for coming on and giving us some insight on the Wild. We're looking forward to seeing what should be a great divisional matchup tonight. And hopefully we can have you again later on this season.
Hey, anytime. Thanks for having me, Michael.
Yeah, no problem. There she is, Jessi Pierce. Follow her on Twitter at, I believe it's Jessi_Pierce with the, Jessi_Pierce, Bardown Beauties podcast, NHL.com. She's also doing Vikings with Score North. And we're winding down the program. We're going to bring in David Pagnotta, the fourth period. Just go around the NHL. It's U.S. Thanksgiving. We got to talk about, who's going to be in the playoffs, right? But before that, Huss is coming in. He's got a couple words. Then we'll bring in David. One sec.
Have to thank Nick and Nikki DQ for their great support of Winnipeg Sports Talk. 12 months a year, the Blizzard is always the most elite treat when it comes to ice cream. All those great Blizzard flavors, including new ones coming all the time, are great. What you might not have tried is the incredible Stack Burgers. And if you haven't, what are you waiting for? DQ's always been a sleeper when it comes to some of the best food in the fast food game. And the 4 Nick and Dicky DQs are ready to serve you. DQ Niverville, DQ Northgate, DQ Polo Park, and DQ St. Anne's. And hey, with the holidays coming up, parties, gatherings, and more, hit them up on Instagram at DQ Manitoba. They'll custom make the famous DQ ice cream cake however you like. And get it ready for you for a quick and easy pickup at any of the 4 Nick and Nicky DQs. And as I mentioned earlier, pretty dry here. They were selling Bud Zero in the Fan Fest today, and I think that'll be the same case at the game tomorrow. So even more, I'm missing and appreciating the great support we have and the great product we have from Winnipeg's favorite local beer, Little Brown Jug. If you're getting ready for the game tomorrow, maybe taking the afternoon off for a hell of a sports day with Canada-Belgium at 1 and then Jets Wild at 6, take it to the next level and make it perfect with a case of 1919 or some of your other Little Brown Jug favorites. You can pop by, pick up Little Brown Jug at the brewery and tap room. Try them all, heck, down in William Avenue. Check out the great merchandise as well with the holidays around the corner. And, of course, you can get the great taste of Little Brown Jug at your local beer store as well. And fine restaurants and bars will have Little Brown Jug 1919 on tap. Keep an eye out for that. And, of course, littlebrownjug.ca for a citywide delivery as well. Every time you watch the National Football League at Boston Pizza, you'll have a chance to win their second grand prize of an incredible trip for 2, weekend in Vegas, including airfare, hotel, tickets to see the Raiders and 49ers, and the night before on New Year's Eve, Golden Knights and St. Louis Blues. Not to mention pizza flights, $5 beer specials. Always a great spot to watch the National Football League, and no better place to watch the Winnipeg Jets as well. Lots of great prizes being given in. You can spin the prize wheel. Many of the BPs do the pick a player promo. And you can also be entered to win a VIP experience for 4 at an upcoming Winnipeg Jets game. Watch the NFL and the Winnipeg Jets and enter to win at your local Boston Pizza, Winnipeg, Selkirk, Morden, Steinbach, and Portage La Prairie.
There's Hess doing such a great job with the reads. He is at the game right now. Canada down to Belgium. 1-0? Is that the soccer term? 80th minute. The Belgium goalie making a lot of saves. Next up, we got David Pagnotta, 4th period, talking hockey at the NHL standings at Thanksgiving. And here we go. Where is it? David, how's it going? Thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, absolutely. You're stuck back at the office, eh? And
yeah, we got Hustler on Twitter posting shirtless videos
in the pool,
in the pool at the World Cup. I'm here in Winnipeg, below freezing. That's okay. a lot of games tonight. The Jets are playing well. I got to say though, we're at Thanksgiving break. This is the time the playoffs basically decided. Is there any big surprises for you? Good surprises or bad surprises here as we're approaching American Thanksgiving?
Well, I mean, you look at the leaders of the divisions, and I don't think anybody at this stage, a quarter mark into the season, expected Boston, New Jersey, Dallas, and Vegas to be at the top of the divisions. So those are good surprises for at least those fan bases. Like New Jersey's rolling, Boston's on fire. Dallas is getting help everywhere, and everybody's stepping in. And it helps when, Seguin and Ben are playing at top tier levels. So those guys are in the mix. And Vegas, I don't think everybody kind of thought they'd be up there. Edmonton or Calgary would probably be at the top of the Pacific by now, and mainly because, Robin Leonard was done for the season. But to see Logan Thompson performing well, to get the depth that they're getting, to get their misfit line back on track, Marcius O'Reilly and Carlson, I don't think anybody really expected those 4 teams to be the leaders of the pack in their divisions at this point. So good problems not problems, but I guess good problem for everybody else. But a good, healthy surprise for that. And I think the other one mainly for me is Seattle. Like, the heck did they come from? Oh, this is what everybody thought they'd be last season in their first year in the NHL. That didn't go well. They managed to get some offense and, kind of spread things out, getting Bjorkstrand, signing Burakovsky, and having a full year of Matty Beniers. Yeah, it helps when you get some guys that can put the puck in the net. So if I'm looking at pleasant surprises so far, it's probably those 5 teams.
Yeah, we almost forgot about Jack Eichel, who's come in and tearing it up on that top line with Vegas. They got 2 really strong lines. We're all concerned about goaltending. Hasn't been a concern. I agree with you on Seattle. Last year, I was like, what are these guys doing? But they did make some nice offseason moves, getting Bjorkstrand for almost for free and signing Burakovsky, and certainly helped with scoring. And they're getting better goaltending. If you want to go with the bad surprises, and if you want to say, hey, the playoffs are set today, I mean, Calgary, Edmonton out of a playoff spot, Vancouver. I think major disappointment here for a lot of the Canadian teams, except for Toronto and Winnipeg, and maybe Montreal, because they really didn't have any expectations.
No, well, I mean, the fans are loving it now, but wait till they end up drafting 9th or 10th overall and they all get pissed off because they're like, we should have had a top 3 pick. But I think more so than anything, like Vancouver, I thought maybe they're going to compete for a wild card spot just because their D is not good. And it proved to be a little more detrimental than a lot of people anticipated. Their D core is just, it's rough. You look at Edmonton and you go, okay, well, Jack Campbell was supposed to be the guy to hold the fort down. And that hasn't really worked out. But at the same time, defensively, they've had some problems. And that was another area that they needed to address and bolster. They didn't do that. So, you look at them. I mean, Ottawa, I thought maybe they compete for a wild card spot. Yeah, they bring in Giroux. Yeah, they brought in DeBrincat. But again, D-core, defense, it's still very important in the National Hockey League. And theirs is bad. So, what do you really expect at this point? So I guess some surprises in terms of the hype from the summer carrying into the season and people thinking they'd be a lot better. The biggest one, though, is probably, again, Edmonton, because defensively, not good. Goaltending has been a struggle for them, obviously. And, yeah, they're scoring, but where's the secondary help coming in? So, again, depth. Another issue for the Edmonton Oilers right now. So, I mean, whatever. There's still 50 games to go in the season for these teams, or a little more for some of them. So nobody's pressing the panic button in Edmonton, but there is certainly some concern as to how this team is going.
Yeah, for me at Edmonton, it just seems like a lot of the questions we had before they got Evander Kane, because he's hurt now. They don't have the secondary scoring, but defense for sure. And goaltending, Jack Campbell, I mean, they're stuck with him now for 5 more years or 4 years. Stuart Skinner's played well. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, just to add, like, he started off, Jack Campbell started off really well in Toronto last season and then hit a lull. Like, there was a good 10, 12 game stretch where he was not good. And then he managed to get out of his funk and rebound and was steady the rest of the way. But that first half of the season, like, people were going, oh, man, Jack's a Vezina candidate. He's going to be cashing in huge in the summer. And then he had that 10, 12 game stretch where he was just bad now, like he is now. And that, he managed to get out of that and then was steady the rest of the way. Wasn't the same guy in the first half of the season, but was steady the rest of the way. So he's gone through these funks before, and I think he can climb out of it. So I'm not, sky is falling right now with respect to him in Edmonton, but he needs to get out of it. And Stuart Skinner's been better, so you're going to give him more time right now. I think he'll even out and be steady. But again, depth for me for the Oilers is another concern again this season.
Yeah, moving on to one of the top stories in the league, it's got to be the New Jersey Devils. At the start of the season, the fans are chanting, "Fire Lindy." Yeah. And then
2 games in.
And now they're on a 13-game winning streak, going for 14 tonight. How has this team done it here? Now at the top of the Metro Division, comfortably ahead of Carolina.
A big part of it is, yes, they're getting depth, contributions. I talked about that at the time. They're getting a lot of contributions. It's not just Jesper Bratt, Nico Hischier, and Jack Hughes. They have other guys that are contributing, Bastian and Dawson Mercer and Miles Wood. And John Marino's been a rock in the back end, but he's also got like 8-9 points. Dougie Hamilton's doing well. Like, they're getting contributions up and down the lineup. Zetterlund is really stepping in there, and they're getting a lot of help. But Vitek Vanacek has been ridiculous in that, like, stupid good for this team. And it's a big reason, and you talk to these players, and it's a big reason as to why they're on top. When your goalie's making that big key save to help propel you forward, and you get that motivation, you're jacked up because he made an amazing save, and then you go out there and you help him out by putting the puck in the back of the net. They got guys that can do that. And so it's a full team effort, for the New Jersey Devils. They're really, really getting the help from all ends of the rink. And when your goalie is 9-0-1 in his last 10 with an under 2 goals against and a whatever it is, 938 something or other save percentage, you usually do pretty well. So they're getting it up and down the lineup. We actually had James Nichols, who covers the Devils for us at the fourth period, sat down and had a good chat last night with Tom Fitzgerald and their GM. And he talked about the depth contributions for this team, but also Nico Hischier and the calming presence that he brings as captain. Plays a 200-foot game, has been getting better, is definitely doing more offensively, but he's being this leader that can really just be counted on to say the right things at the right moment, calm guys down when they need to calm down, and motivate them when they need to. He's not the most vocal, flamboyant guy in terms of a public setting, but he's the right guy in the room, kind of like a Petrus Bergeron, who's not going to be going all out in public, but he's going to be saying the right things in the room for his teammates. And it's another big contributing factor as to why this team is able to stay so confident and stay on course. Hischier's leadership, along with the team's depth, mixed with their goaltending, it's a hell of a recipe for success.
Yeah, it's been a real coming out party for Jack Hughes, and I think we can no longer say Jesper Bratt, one of the most underrated in the league, 24 points in 19 games.
And they just started contract talks on Monday to at least get the ball rolling to see what a long-term 8-year extension is really going to look like at this stage. So that's something to keep tabs on if you're a Devils fan, to see how that kind of moves along here over the next few weeks.
Yeah, he's making close to 5.5 this year. He's probably gonna get a huge raise next season. In terms of signings, we did have one signing today, and this one, it's, I don't know, surprising, but Peter Kochetkov, the rookie goalie of Carolina, is off to a great start, but he's played 7 games, got a 4-year, $8 million extension. Are these guys crazy or crazy smart?
Look, they love to go by the numbers in Carolina, and they've got a good, at least from that perspective, they can look into their crystal ball and really do well in projecting how a player is going to perform for the most part. Jesperi Kotkaniemi notwithstanding, he's been a little bit rough for them. But with respect to the goaltender, look, he's been solid, he's been steady, and to get a strong number 2 like that at only a $2 million cap hit, I think they wanted to take advantage of this pretty early. You're seeing some teams looking at some of their young players that are on expiring deals, and even though they're going to be RFAs, just looking at them going, we really project this guy to do well. Like there's no, maybe he might falter in year 2 or year 3. Looking forward, we really feel this guy can be consistent and go on a strong incline. So I think for the most part, this is certainly part of that equation. And to get him at $2 million, to get a strong, steady, reliable backup at $2 million nowadays is a potential steal if he can keep it up. So they wanted to get that house cleaning in order pretty quick.
Yeah, I actually had Freddie Anderson in fantasy, so I picked him up last week, and he's been pretty solid. We saw him here in Winnipeg on Monday.
Yep.
One team that you're close to in Toronto, the Maple Leafs, had a number of injuries on defense. Jake Muzzin, now Morgan Riley earlier this week. A tough break for them. Are they going to make a move and try to bring in a defenseman?
Well, they've been looking since the summer, but the problem with the Maple Leafs and their scenario right now is their cap situation. With Muzzin on LTIR and presumably done for the season, they're utilizing pretty much all of that space for their call-ups and other guys right now. So now with Riley on LTIR, that will help accrue a little bit of money. But in order for him to come back, they need to have his full cap hit in order for him to play. So to have that space. So they can't just bring somebody in because they've got, let's say, $5 million in cap space, because he's got to come back. So the tricky part for Toronto now is not only do they want to, figure out their defense, but they need to be able to be in a position to say, okay, well, we can't use our full $7.5 million to Riley because we want him back in the lineup in January. They have to have that money. So it's like Florida's going through a very similar situation right now. Anthony Duclair's got a $3 million cap hit. He will be coming back in like mid to second half of December, about 3-4 weeks from now. They don't have cap space. Like they've got like 80 grand worth of cap space right now, 80, 90 grand. They've got to free up $3 million somehow in order for Duclair to be eligible to play. So either they move him, which they don't want to do. They move Patrick Hornquist. He's got a $5.4 million cap hit. Do they retain money on it? Do they incentivize the team to take the full cap in order for Duclair to come back? Like that's a challenge now for the Panthers and GM Bill Zito. And that's what teams like Edmonton and Toronto don't want to do. Evander Kane's coming back in a few months. They need to have his $7 million cap hit available so he can get it back in the lineup. Same with Toronto and Riley. So they could go bargain hunting, look for a guy around, $800,000, $900,000, $1 million, maybe 1.1. They've got a little bit of space to play with because they can send some guys down to the A and create a little bit of extra space in that regard. But that's the tricky part. If they want to do anything from an impact perspective, they got to move a body out. And that's a big challenge for a lot of teams as we're in this magical cap era.
Yeah, last one here as we wrap up. Looking at the standings at U.S. Thanksgiving, I did not see the offseason champions, Ottawa Senators, in last place.
Yeah.
The Jets were cursed with being offseason champions last year. Now it's hitting Ottawa. Are we going to see a coaching change there or any changes coming in Ottawa with the start to the season?
They've been very adamant. At least Pierre Dorion has been their GM about, no, we're not changing the coach. He's our guy. The problem's on ice. We don't have the assets to really turn this thing around. They've been trying to get a defenseman for weeks. They haven't been able to do that. I mean, Shabbat's going to come back, if not this game, then the next one. Supposed to be back at some point this week. So, that may help, but they still have deficiencies on that blue line. So they're looking to see how they can bring in somebody on that back end. The problem is they just haven't been able to do it. Yeah, there were the reports of Tyler Myers in Vancouver, with Zaitsev going back the other way and whatnot. I mean, that doesn't, like, if you've seen Tyler Myers the last couple of seasons, he's not been good defensively. So if you're looking, and that's what they need. They need defense. So maybe a change of sceneries, I guess, kind of sparks things. But I think they go in a different direction at the end of the day. But they haven't been able to find that piece yet. So whether it's, and the other problem is because they're last, like they're not going to overpay to bring in a rental type player because what the heck's the point right now? So they've got to look to bring in somebody that's, got a little bit of term or at least is controllable. But the options for that particular player are a little bit limited in terms of trying to spend money and work something out here. So it's a tough situation for Ottawa. Look, everybody, myself included, expected them to be better. And I think I mentioned earlier, I thought maybe they'd be a wild card contender. Whoops.
Yeah.
Fix that D, boys.
All right. Well, David, thank you so much for taking the time to join us here at Winnipeg Sports Talk. Really appreciate it. Looking forward to seeing all your work at the Fourth Period. And we can follow you on Twitter as well at the Fourth Period. There he is, David Pagnotta, Fourth Period. Follow him on Twitter, as I said, at the Fourth Period and thefourthperiod.com. Always love having him on and Dennis on, just going around the league as we are American Thanksgiving tomorrow, and we can talk about the standings. I saw Frank Saravalli's got his trade targets list out yesterday, so we're kind of getting into rumor season, figuring out who's a playoff team, who's not. We talked about some of the disappointments and a great talk in there with David. We do have the Jets game tonight. And here, bring up. I always like looking at the lines for each game, even if you don't bet. I know a lot of people got opinions on gambling, but it is nice to see what does Vegas think about the game and who's favored, who's not. And shout out to Coolbet, coolbet.com. We've got the lines here. The Jets, they're actually underdogs tonight in Minnesota, plus 133. Big slate of games. The NHL schedule, it's been kind of weird lately. Last night, 2 games, Monday, basically everyone playing it. I think Sunday, there's like 2 games. You're going from one day, everyone playing, and another day, basically no one. I don't know what they're doing here. I guess we have no hockey games tomorrow. It's the NFL. They're got Thanksgiving, but they're the Jets, plus 133 underdogs. I do like, I'm more of a prop guy. If you want to look at props, Mark Scheifele, plus 190 to score. Not bad. Dubois, plus 205. Maybe you want to go home cooking. Blake Wheeler, plus 295 to score. And Cole Perfetti's in there. Hey, Sam Gagner in the top line, plus 360. That's not bad as well. I always like looking at lines. Who's going to score? A number of games. This Boston-Florida game. I mean, Boston's on a roll. Can New Jersey get their 13th win in a row against the Leafs tonight? That's a big one there, minus 136. It's not bad. Val and the Leafs, if you think anyone can take down New Jersey, Calgary, and Pittsburgh. Calgary starting to figure they had a win the other day. Edmonton continues their road trip. I think they're in trouble. Their penalty kill sucks. They got goaltending problems, although Skinner's been good. They don't have scoring depth. But there's a bit of a pick 'em there against the Islanders. And the late one, could be a couple of lopsided games there. Colorado hosting Vancouver, Vegas hosting Ottawa. And as you mentioned, the Kraken is a surprise team. I agree. They're hosting the Sharks. I do wonder if Erik Karlsson will be dealt. He's got the full no move, so I don't think so. And the high salary, we'll have to see. Hustler likes to give out some picks. I got a couple props here. Sure, I'll give them out. Carolina, I had Stefan Noesen to score. He's on the top line with Sebastian Aho. That was plus 290. I got Mark Stone to score for Vegas against his former team, Ottawa, and plus 190. And Jordan Kyrou on the top line for the Blues. They're against, I'm scrolling around here, against the Sabres who played last night. That Blues top line been very hot here on this win streak. And I was kind of dumping on them. They lost like 8 in a row, but they've come back and won that many in a row. So, and Jordan Binnington has played very well. So I think the Central Division going to be a bit of a battle with the Jets, Colorado, St. Louis, Minnesota. And there we go. I know we got a lot of games on tonight. I got to throw this out to the chat. Maybe I'm weird, but on nights when when there's so many games on, I love the package. I like flipping back and forth, but I don't know what you guys, but when there's a shootout, I just flip the channel. I don't care. Maybe it's because I play fantasy and you can't get fantasy points in the shootout. Maybe I don't actually care. Maybe if I have a straight bet on the game, I care about who wins, but I want to go see other action. I don't care about watching shootouts. I do wonder if we'll ever see a change there. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm the weird one who doesn't watch shootouts, but we'll see. But yeah, so many games on tonight. The Jets starting at 6:00 in Minnesota. Holiday, the night before Thanksgiving. I think it's a big party night in the U.S., so I'm assuming a really good crowd. Should be a great game. And yes, it is a national game on Sportsnet. And that'll do it for me. What a great show. Thanks for everyone who tuned in instead of watching the Canada game. And yes, Canada did lose against Belgium. They had so many chances to score, weren't able to put one past the keeper, for using soccer terms. And Hustler will be on tomorrow talking about his experience, and we'll be talking about the game. And we'll also be recapping the Jets game. So if you are here, you lasted the whole show. Thank you so much, everyone. Make sure you hit the like button, that thumbs up. Tells YouTube we got some good content, and it'll show it to more people, help us get more subscribers. We've kind of been locked in. We got 8,500, so make sure you hit the red subscribe button if you haven't. And I got some comments here in chat. Bobby B says, thanks. Jeff Cabell's great job. MC Stormy, no more loser points in OT. That's a different discussion. Dustin thinks I'm weird for not watching overtime. And Lowry's right hand says the NHL scheduling is awful. with everyone playing one night and 2 teams on the next. It is very weird. Kevin Kowal, how red is Huss going to be tomorrow? We'll have to see. Go to Hustler's Twitter at Hustlerama, and I'll have to post some stuff on the Winnipeg Sports Talk Instagram of him at the game. We weren't going to play his shirtless pool video, which broke the internet. That's not, I don't know if, I think YouTube would probably censor us if we put that on. One of the ours. How close were we to 80? I think we got 8,500, right? 84.58, I think. So appreciate it. Well, hey, that's the end of the show. Again, thanks to all our guests. Murat, Darrin, Billeck, Jessi Pierce, and David Pagnotta at the end. Thanks to all of our sponsors for making this happen. And thanks to all you guys for listening. We couldn't do that if no one listened, right? So thank you so much, everyone. And enjoy the Jets game tonight. And we'll be back at 1 o'clock tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Oh, my God. Oh! Shut it down. Let's go home.
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.